Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. So I'm back on the Pango Explorer kit guitar build, and if you remember, I had this horrible problem with the bridge, and basically what I decided to do was mount the neck first and then plug the holes for the bridge, and now I'm going to have to re-drill it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you actually have to measure for the bridge once you get your holes filled and everything's back to sort of a blank slate. So what we have here is sort of a Gibson scale, which is 27 3/4. What you want to do, and I read this from some really experienced Gibson people online, you want to measure from the nut along the edge of the fretboard and draw a line parallel to that fretboard, but measure out 24 3/4 inches. So basically what you're doing is you're laying a straight edge here all the way up against the edge of the fretboard, all the way down, drawing your line here parallel to that line, so just right along that edge. Do the same thing on the other side, right up against the fretboard, draw that line. What I did at that point was find the center point between those two lines. The next measurement you need to take is, remember that 24 3/4 inches, so you basically measure out 24 3/4 inches from the nut and mark it, then 24 3/4 inches on this side, mark it, then come in with a much more detailed ruler, one that has 30 seconds on it, and measure 1/16 from the first line you drew on the treble side and 5/32 from the other line you drew on the bass side. And then that establishes your bridge line, so you can draw a line across those 2 points. Now your posts are going to be set farther apart than that, so once you find the center, you need to find 74 millimeters across, so that's going to be 37 millimeters on each side, or I measured it as 1.45 inches from the center on each side, and make sure that it's 2.9 inches across, which is basically 74 millimeters. So that was my method. Then I drew some circles around these points so that if I was lining up a template, I could line up the circles on these markings here with the template, and I actually built a little template that I'm using for this bridge drill. So this hole and this hole are 74 millimeters apart, and they are 7/16 inches around. That's really close to what they actually need to be. Remember, if you saw the first episode where I was cleaning out the bridge holes, I used a 7/16 inch bit to do that, but I kind of wallowed it out a little bit, just kind of wiggled it a little bit from side to side to gain just a tiny bit extra. So that's what I'll do on this too. But now that I've drawn these circles here, I can line that up with these circles here, and I have one extra one that's a little bit smaller just to help me line things up. I'm going to clamp this in place on top of my body, and because I'm not using a drill press, the thickness of this block is going to give me a starting point to establish a straight line into the body so that I drill straight. And that's basically going to keep things exactly where I want it, or that's the theory. So let's see how this works. All right, my template is clamped in place. So I have established a straight line exactly where I want my holes to be. The other thing that's going to help by having this template here is it will prevent tear out on the surface of the guitar, so I'll have a nice clean hole going in. I have taped off my drill bit so that I don't go any farther than I want to go, and I measured the depth that the hole needs to be. I added the thickness of the template and then marked that on my bit. So that's how I'm gonna stop the bit as it travels in, and I've wrapped this tape here relatively thick so that just in case the bit starts to take off, it'll stop. And the other thing that I did was I made sure that this surface of this guitar here is flat. So I've got two 2x4s holding it up so that it's not resting on the neck, it's resting on the body itself, and that way is exactly flat. Okay, here goes nothing. All right, well, I've made a mess. I'm gonna clean this up and come right back. So here's the result. The holes are really clean, really nice. I went ahead and kind of enlarged them just a tad so that these nuts or these bushings would fit into the shoulder. All I need to do now is pound these in. So I've still got this thing sitting up on those blocks. If you remember, that's probably just a good way to leave it. So I get these things pounded in properly. When I did this before, I didn't have the neck on it. Yeah, that looks absolutely perfect. Well, this is a beautiful sight, which is the bridge located correctly and the tailpiece on there as well. And so now I'm going to turn my attention to some of the rest of the hardware. I think I'm going to start with the jack plate back here. If you take a look at the original jack plate that came with this kit, it's the rectangular style jack plate with 4 holes. It's got this really bad jack on the back. It's like a really thin conductor, crappy chrome plating, plastic isolators, and the plate itself is really kind of thin. So I'm going to upgrade that. I've got this thicker football style jack. It's only a 2-screw mount, but I've got a genuine Switchcraft jack in it, and these are nickel plated stainless and much heavier gauge. It provides a much more solid feel when you plug a guitar cable in with one of these. So I'm going to put this on instead of this. You can even feel a difference in the weight. Then I've got a couple of other upgrades. I got a good deal on these end pins, strap buttons, whatever you want to call them, but these are black and I really wanted black ones. Then I've also got the original wiring harness here, and this thing has a pretty decent mechanical switch on it. It's not great, but it's not bad enough that I want to use something else. But these pots, man, these pots make me sad. They're just these little mini ones, and they just feel gummy when you rotate them, and the shafts are super tiny, crappy capacitor, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to free this switch from this mess, and then I've got a couple of these 500K CTS pots. Now these are genuine Fender parts. You don't have to order them that way, but these are the American spec 3/8 inch mount hole and split shaft, 500K, you know, full size body, nice capacitor, so on and so forth. The only reason I ordered genuine Fender parts in this case is because Amazon actually has a pretty good deal on those, but you don't have to. You can get CTS pots from just about anywhere. All right, whether you're using the jack that came with the kit or you're using your own, just make sure you know which pin on the jack is the tip and which is the ring. This thing is ready to install now. Installing this, I'm just going to feed the wiring through the hole, line it up, center punch it, and drill it. Looks pretty good. So the next thing I've got to do is free this switch from this mess. All right, so the switch is now free, but it doesn't fit in the hole. And I probably should have checked that before I finished the body, but we can still correct it now. So I'm sure it's a metric size, and I'm sure that a really good quality switch like this would probably be a 1/2 inch, but this one happens to be closer to 15-30 seconds. I don't really know what the metric equivalent is right now. I haven't looked it up, but I'm going to drill this one out to 15-30 seconds because that's the bit I have. So what I'm going to do is drill this in reverse to start with, and that will ensure that I get as little tear out as possible on the top. And then I'm just going to go really slow and try to finish it out on the back side with no problems. Well, it just went all the way through without even asking, so now it fits with no problems. So I've got to enlarge these 2 holes as well, and I knew that because I'm not using the original pots. So those are going to require a 3/8 hole. All right, well, I've just dropped my pots in here, and I'm just putting the nuts on from the bottom side here. I've got this guitar up on my 2x4s. I always like to get things started by hand before I use any kind of wrench. Let's see, I think one thing that I can do before I actually mount these is go ahead and put the tone capacitor on. I think that might be easier to do before I install it. So I am going to remove this one and do that first. I'm going to use a .022 tone capacitor. The one that came with the kit was a .047. I don't know if that one would be really the best. This came with the Fender tone pot, so it was also kind of free. All right, with the tone pot wired up with the capacitor anyway, I'm going to go ahead and install it. I just think that'll make my time a little bit easier when I'm in there. All right, and I've clocked the pots so that the tabs are facing each other. That's going to make my wiring a lot easier as well. And now I'm going to try to determine the switch mounting location, or orientation I should say. There's only one location. So ultimately you can clock your switch in a number of different ways, but I think I'm going to clock mine so that it's kind of obvious which direction I'm picking. So you literally flip the switch forward for the front pickup and backward for this last pickup, the bridge pickup. So I think that makes the most sense intuitively to me. Easy enough to change that if somebody doesn't like it. All right, well, I have everything kind of wired together in here. So just to sum up, I ran a ground wire from the volume pot to the switch to the tone pot. That's just grounded to the backs, or to that grounding lug of all three of those. Then I ran the jack wire to the volume pot. There's one lug in the center of the volume pot that gets the tip side of the jack. Then there's one that gets the ground that just goes to the back of the pot. This side of the volume pot is grounded. This side of the volume pot goes to the tone pot, center pin. Then you've got either side of that connection can go to the center pin, or I guess the two signal wires joined together of the switch, and then the pickups are going to go in the sides of the switch. I don't have the pickups in here yet, and by the way, I'll post a link to my wiring diagram. All right, well, there's very few pieces of original hardware that I actually did use on this project, but I did use the original bridge and the original tailpiece. I also used the original switch. I've used the original humbucker rings and the screws for those. But obviously I have changed out the pots, the jack, and the humbuckers. I'm going to change out the tuners, truss rod cover, strap buttons, and I don't know, maybe a couple more things, the knobs for sure. These actually are really much nicer humbuckers for just a little bit more money. What these are the Fleor humbuckers. They're PAF copies. They kind of look like Seymour Duncan wiring. They've got 4 conductor wires. They've got adjustable pole pieces on the outsides here. They've got really nice magnets or pole pieces here with concentric circles on top, sort of to avoid corrosion or scratches. They've got long leads, really nice hardware, and they're wax potted. So they've got a lot of things going for them. Just in terms of build quality, they are far and above what came with this kit. So I know some people are going to be disappointed that I didn't use the original humbuckers so that you could hear what those sound like. These are such a vast upgrade, and I didn't really buy the hardware kit to get those humbuckers. I really bought it for the bridge tailpiece and honestly for the back cover. I really seriously bought them for the back cover, so I'm going to use that too, by the way. So anyway, I'm going to wire these humbuckers in. They wire up just like Seymour Duncan's. They're I think the black and the green are the 2 leads that you end up using, and you tie the red and the white wires together. I could do a coil tap. I'm not going to right now, but let me get those wired up. Then we can do the back plate. Then I'll be waiting for the tuners and the truss rod cover to show up, which aren't due here until Friday. And honestly, I've got to go out of town for a couple of days, and it's going to put me behind on working at the end of this project. So it might be another week before I can get a video out for this guitar. I'm going to try to put some other stuff out in the interim. We'll see if I can keep up with my previous schedule. I'm doing twice a week, Wednesdays and Sundays. Last thing I'm going to install are some strap buttons. I'm going to install those right on the back of the neck and down here right in the center. This one I'm just going to place it roughly an inch from the neck and body joint right in the center. And in keeping with the white and black theme of the guitar, I'm going to use a white felt. This one is a little bit trickier because I've got to run a line down the center of the guitar just to get an idea of where to put it. So I'm going to get a piece of masking tape. I'm going to run it kind of where I think it needs to be, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then I've got to do some kind of measurement with a straight edge. All right, well, that's all I can do right now. And what I have left is the knobs, the truss rod cover, and the tuners. Then of course strings and setup. It's coming along really nicely, and I don't want to jinx anything, but I feel pretty good about this project. So the tuners and the truss rod cover and a couple other small parts will be here within a week. I'll post a couple more videos in the interim, and then we'll be back on this build to show you the end. Thanks for hanging with me. I appreciate when you guys leave me likes and comments. I love the subscriptions, and I'll see you next time.